Hi friends, we interrupt your regularly scheduled Friday Sews episode to bring you a mini tutorial. I don't know if you remember last week, but I showed you a pin cushion that you can stick to your sewing machine or stick to a wristband. I made a little tutorial for the sewing machine wrist pin cushion. You can transfer it back and forth. Now, depending on your sewing room, my sewing machine and my table are close together, but I still manage that if I had it on my wrist and I went over and I was working with the fabric, I would take it off my wrist because it would get caught. And then when I would go to pin, I wouldn't have it, or I would leave it on the table and then I would go over to the sewing machine and I would have nowhere to put the pins as I took them out. So I went with, I have an original that I made from a tutorial from Marie's Scrappy Creations. Now this is something Marie always has on in her videos. You always see her with her pin cushion. So I followed basically that idea and those skills, but I added extra Velcro. So there's a piece of Velcro on my sewing machine, and there is a piece of obviously the opposite Velcro on the bottom of the pin cushion. Now you can Velcro it to your wrist, and then you can bring it over with you to the sewing machine, and if you need somewhere to stick your pins while you're sewing, you can move it up to the sewing machine. Anyway, I could ramble on and on. I'll be sure this is not Friday Sews. I just wanted to do a quick intro to say you can make this thing entirely out of Dollar Tree products pretty much, because you can get, or you can out of scraps. And if you ever buy a fat quarter that comes with a piece of cardboard in it, save that cardboard. And obviously Velcro, the other good place to get Velcro is at Hobby Lobby, because it's usually on sale for $1.99 maybe, and you get a bunch of it. So I got my Velcros from the Dollar Tree. Some of my fabric is from the Dollar Tree. A bunch of SF101. So, and even that, I use basically scraps for this. So grab all that stuff and let's get into it. First, you will need a piece of fabric that is 4 inches by 10 inches. That will be for the strap. Then you will need, if you're going to make 2 pin cushions, one for the sewing machine and one for your wrist, to switch back and forth. You also need, this is 2 3/4 inch by 8 inches of fabric, and then you would want interfacing that's about 2 inches by 7 inches, just to fit down the center. And then you also need for interfacing to be in the middle of the strap, depending on how cushioned you want your strap. This strap I only did regular SF101 interfacing, and it doesn't have to be soft. Or if you have fusible fleece, or if you have batting, whatever you have, you just need a scrap of it, 1 inch by, I'd say, oh, I cut it, but I'd say about 10 inches, just to fit within that. And then you also need a piece of cardboard. I haven't cut my pieces yet, so I will do that now. For cardboard, you will need approximately 3.5 by 1 3/4 inches. So 3.5 inches this way, 1 3/4 inches this way. You may end up cutting a little bit more off as you stuff your pin cushion, and they're not exact. You'll see what they're for later. And of course you need pins, clips, sewing machine, thread, okay, so we'll start off by, oh, I forgot one other thing, is Velcro. Sometimes I clean up after myself so well I can't find things. So if you want to have a piece that goes onto your sewing machine, and obviously not black, unless your sewing machine is black, it doesn't really matter, but this is sticky because I thought of this after I forgot to sew it on, so I used sticky and then some fabric glue. I have a black piece of sticky Velcro on my sewing machine, and it is the, I had to check, it's the soft side, and this is the rough side of the Velcro. And 3 pieces just for the wrist, 2 soft, 1 rough, 2 rough pieces for, so 3 total of the rough side of the Velcro, 3 total of the soft side of the Velcro, but 1 of those goes on the sewing machine and should be sticky backed. Unless you have double-sided tape, then just pop that on the back of your Velcro instead of sewing it. This is my Dollar Tree Velcro. So I will get those pieces cut in the next step. But first, we're going to do our interfacing. So I just try to kind of eyeball center the interfacing so it'll be in the main part. Just give a tiny bit of structure. Might as well, since I had everything cut out and ready, might as well do it all at once. We're not going to do this yet. We'll do that next. And then with no steam, this is easy because it's smaller than the fabric. If you ever have any tiniest piece of interfacing or the glue overhanging your fabric, you want to use a pressing cloth. And I have my cutting board underneath to try to protect my cutting mat. It's a bamboo cutting board that's also a great ironing board. So don't mind my iron, it's a little dirty. No matter what I do to try to clean it out, there's always black stuff coming out of it. Okay, so those 2 are interfaced. And now this one, we are going to first fold it in half. And you can give it a little press. Give it some steam. Down the center. And then if you want to, before you get involved in making all the other folds, you want to fold down about 1/4 of an inch, eyeballing of course. And if you have a clapper, you can use your clapper. And now you see, here's a good example. My eyeballing is not that great, or the pinking shear part of this is not even. So, you look at it and it looks crooked, you might want to fix it. You could get your handy dandy seam gauge out and measure it. But just fix it. Okay. On both ends. You can leave that or fix it all once you've got all your lines pressed. It's up to you. So then you want to fold one side into the center, just like making a strap. Make sure we're even here. Have to touch that up a little bit. Obviously, if this is just for you, you have to be a perfectionist. If it's your first time, just make your first one and go from there. Okay, so nothing is even or perfect. You just don't want them to overlap too much. Just gonna, where you have these two folded in, then you're Going to fold that in so they meet and everything is beautiful. Don't worry, I'm sure I'll mess that up with the iron or something. Okay. And then you keep folding and pressing to try to keep everything even. And try to make that as neat as possible and everything meets up, I mean. Okay. Now we're gonna open it up. There's a few things we have to do, but I just sewed the Velcro at the end. Well, not at the end, but. So now we need to put our interfacing on either one of these two middle ones. And obviously, if it's too long, you can either lift your flap or you can snip some off. You just need it. To sort of fit right in that line. I shut my steam off. And I'll press down my interfacing. It doesn't, you don't even have to do that actually. You could just pop it in there. Fold everything back over it. And then when you press to get that down again, you will be pressing that interfacing. Okay, and then you're going to pin or clip it. Make sure everything is the way you want it. I mean, you see, we're gonna have something like that. That doesn't bother me. And then what I would do, where is my little sample? I think I threw it on the floor. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh. So, you can see they're not quite the same. Well, they're close enough. What I do is, I use, I think I can show you if it's not attached. So, I have these feet. I believe they both came as extra. I think this one is the 1/4 inch foot for quilting. And this one is the edge stitch. I call it the edge stitch foot. I don't know what it really is. With a Janome, it's C. So what I do is I put that on my sewing machine. You know, obviously when you start here, you're going to need a hump jumper if you have one of those, or just a really thick piece of scrap fabric to put underneath here, because it will just stay here and not do anything. And basically you're going to edge stitch. You're going to start here, edge stitch over here, all the way down and over there. And then you're going to keep edge stitching all the way around so it has basically a line, an outline. And then if you want to quilt it, especially if you put some batting in there. I just did 2 lines. What I did, I think I switched. I either did a regular foot and just, you know, switched, or I did a 1/4 inch foot and I did a 1/4 inch over here. Whatever makes it, you know. You can see they're not. Well, we got Velcro. You're going to end up having Velcro stitching in between it all, so. You want to stitch all the way around that. And then come back and we'll set up our Velcro. Also, while you're at the sewing machine, you could take these 2 pieces. Basically going to fold them in half. You can press it if you want, since you're sitting here with an iron. I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch down here and a 1/4 inch down here, leaving this open at the top. I believe One of the ways to do it also is you could fold this down. I did that on one and then I had trouble. Okay, bonus. If you forget to put on your Velcro before you sew, you can basically just unpick it from here to here. That's what I did. You could unpick the whole thing. Or use sticky back. And then I made sure that under the sewing machine none of this got caught. And I sewed on the Velcro. And then you just go back down your same line right there and sew that up. Stitch a 1/4 inch back stitch at the top and the bottom on both sides, and we're stitching all the way around this, and then we'll come back with our Velcro. In the meantime, while you were, okay, so we're at the sewing machine, we're going to do all the sewing. While you're there, if you have your sticky piece of Velcro, you could go ahead and figure out where you want to put that on your sewing machine and get it to stick. So it has that, you know, it usually needs 24 hours. So do that and then meet me back here and we will go to the next step. Just kind of give that a little bit of a trim. Okay, the mess is back. So to make it simple, you could just don't cut stitches, just kind of give that a little bit of a trim so it doesn't have as, you know, much in the corner. And you could paint the sides of this if you needed to. This out. And of course, if you trim too far, you can always go back and go over that corner. It's not too difficult. I have a bunch of turning tools, but I have my chopstick. This is making me want watermelon. Okay. Corner's good there. Corners. Here. Want to press this too. My iron was being a bit of a meanie, so I put them in the corner. I was pressing this. All I did was one stitch down the middle, but it gave me one of these little dots, 2 of those dots, because we have hard water here, and the box says don't use distilled water, just use regular old water. Yeah, well, it turns into black rocks inside the iron. Sorry. So we will get these all pressed and ready, and then we'll go back to the strap. Put on some Velcro. Before you press this, look at this mess. What is this? So it just makes it worse. Anyway, before you press it, you can try to pull this in. Fold all this down. And press it how you will want it to be closed. Try to get it nice and neat so that once you stuff it and you press it and you either pop it under the sewing machine or hand sew it, it might be neat. But trust me, this was so difficult. I glued it and then I just popped it through the sewing machine. I didn't even get it all because the other one was hand sewn. I mean, if you like to hand sew, I like to. I'm just not good at it. So, okay. So you can get those ready for pressing. Pull in it doesn't have to be any particular size as long as it's longer than your Velcro. Oh, guess what? I forgot. That's why this one has a sticky. Mistakes happen, but I will remind you not to make my mistake. Okay, so Velcro will, hopefully I'll remember to put in there that before you sew this, you have to put the Velcro on bottom. With this one I picked this side to be the bottom because it was only a half a butterfly and this had more, or dragonfly. I can't remember what this is. Okay. We're gonna get this right because this is, if you have one to compare, which I do, you know that you want your pin cushion sort of center. So you would take this once it's, you know, just kind of figure out where you want it to go. So the middle one is soft and the one to the side of it is soft. So you're gonna put that on. What I do is, just to have a starting point, I already folded it, but it didn't make a crease. Just give yourself a little crease, or don't stick 2 pins, just stick 1 pin in. Ow! This is what happens when you do things after bedtime. Okay. Who hasn't pinned themselves? Now I have to keep my hand away from there. And then you kind of set it up where you want it. And I'm going to pretend I pinned it. I actually just stuck it into there. You could clip it too. That will kind of hold it in place. Whatever works. If you have, which I usually have, glue sticks laying around, you could just give it a little bit of glue. Put a pressing cloth over that and use a nice hot dry iron, and the glue will dry so nothing will go up your needle, and that way it'll stay in place and you won't have to have pins in the Velcro while you're sewing. So this one's soft and this one's soft. And I think I just knocked some over. No, I didn't. So this one you just want to make sure that it's not near, this has extra thickness right here. So you want it to come just below, which almost covers my, so if I really wanted to hide this, I would make sure that this was on the other side. I didn't even really look at this. But this one I picked what, you know, strawberries I liked or whatever. But you can just pop that on there. I think I'll glue it. I stopped bleeding. I'm good. You do those two. Just make sure you back stitch wherever you start and end. Go all the way around. Stitching, I usually do a 3.0 millimeter stitch length because you want to be able to get through it all. You've got a few layers depending on what you interface this with. So you're going to stitch those two in place. And then after that, you're going to come back. Well, you're not going to come back. I'm just going to show you right now that you basically see how when I flip this one over, there's one all the way to the right. So you'll have yours like this. You'll flip it over. You won't have this sticking up. You'll have all your stitch lines so you'll be able to see where the other Velcro is, and you're going to do the same thing with a rough piece. Notice how I check. With the rough piece, you want to go past this thickness to right there. You're going to stitch that in place. Or you could have them all ready, do all this stitching and flip it over and do this stitching. You're going to get those all stitched on, and of course they'll already be on here. Insert magical already done footage. And then we're going to stuff our pin cushion and finish it up. Here is the strap all done. You can see looks just like this one. So when you flip it over, it's like that and like that. And if you fold it together, and then it's ready to, I'll use this one as a sample because the other ones aren't done, stick a pincushion on. So let's work on stuffing that cushion and getting it ready. And then here's where you might want to trim some of this off. Stitch right there. cardboard will stop them. Just be careful not to go like that. Always go straight down, aim for the middle, and when you're doing your Velcro, here's a little tip. Don't do it like Mary did it. You should make sure that it's center. Maybe measure. Got some funky threads, but it still works sticking on the sewing machine. I will show that. And then this one, you can squish it around. I went over this a few times. Sloppy, but it works. And then you just take that, stick it on there, and there you go. I have it on this wrist because my watch is in the way. And then you just remember, you'll feel that cardboard, and you know that the cardboard is on the bottom. Now let's get a picture of it on the sewing machine. Original. This is the one that has the walnut shells and it's too squishy. This is the one that has stuffing and fabric and it velcros to the wrist or the sewing machine. This velcros to the wrist or the sewing machine. Same here and same here. And I hope you enjoy this. If you do, please hit the like button. And if you have not subscribed already, please hit subscribe and you'll know when I come out with my next Friday sews. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you soon.